It's hot out here. We need to make this a little faster. Yeah, that was easy. Of course, no man should ever be forced to do anything the easy way. Let's put it back, do it wrong. Yeah, that might be better. All right, so earlier this year, the wife and I sat down in front of some YouTube, threw on some hardcore garage on the big screen, and when we got to the slowest GMC Typhoon ever, I think was the name of the video, my wife got kind of inspired. She kept saying stuff like,
"That is so cool."
And I heard that several times, and eventually she said the magic words.
How hard would it be to do something like that?
Well, little did she know, she just did the hard part. The rest of it's just heavy lifting, and I get to do that, so I guess it'd be real easy for her. So, let's do this. Now, at the end of our driveway, we've got this shipping container that we use for storage. You might remember it from the 3D lighted sign video. This is probably the most obvious place to do a project like this. Now, I thought the first step to a project like this is get the truck closer to where we're going to do the project. But it turns out I was wrong. The first step to a project like this is kill all the red wasps that built their nests in the frame and in the fender. Then you can move it closer to your project. All right, before we get started on this project, let's talk about this truck. There's no title on this truck, which means we can part it out, use it as a parts truck, or we can repurpose it with an artistic appeal as yard art, which is the plan here. And the reason is, every body panel on this truck has some type of issue. For example, that gap right there between the fender and the cab tells me there's a problem with the cab, or the fender, or the frame. And I'm hoping it's not the frame, because I intend to use the frame to fix that blue truck back there. There's also a problem with either the cab or the latch mechanism on the door. And the reason I say that is all the rods are in place on the door, but the door will not open. I'm thinking there's an issue with the latch, but it might be that the whole cab has a slight skew to it. I don't know. This side of the bed looks good. The other side of the bed has a huge dent in the front of the bed. Then in the back of the bed, I intend to section out a piece right there to use for a body modification on the stupid truck. So that's good. Now the floor of the bed, a large section of it will go to this project, but the rest of the floor in the bed is in decent shape, so we're going to try and save as much of that for future use. We're also going to go around this truck and try to remove and save anything that is salvageable that can be used later in life. I seem to be a hoarder like that. Now, we want this project to be super cool and artistic, but we also want it to be somewhat functional. So let's see what we can do with it. I'd usually use a plasma cutter to do this, but I know that parts of this has reinforcement on the bottom side, so we're going to have to use a Sawzall in certain parts, which means that we need a kerf wide enough to get the Sawzall blade through there, and this will do a better job of creating a wider kerf than a plasma cutter will. So we've reached a dilemma here, and that is the simple fact that that door still does not open. Why is that important? Well, that's important because that rotten seat has to be removed in order to make the cut line which goes under the seat. Now, that doesn't seem that big of a deal. I can go up underneath it and cut the bolts out with the cutoff wheel or the plasma cutter, whatever, and that'll be fine. Pull it out the other side. But we still got to deal with the dash. And I don't think I'm going to be able to access everything in the dash in reference to pulling it out. Now, my next idea was just cut through it. But the dash itself is dry rotted and really isn't worth saving. But there are parts behind that dash that I think would probably be salvageable, and given the opportunity, I'd like to throw them in the back and act like a hoarder. Now, the next idea I had was just go in right there, cut the post. Just cut through the body of the post and then repair the body after the fact. The problem with that idea, quite honestly, is I'd like to save that paint. Granted, that's not the original paint, otherwise the Sonoma ST right there would not be painted over. But the whole truck matches, and it's got a certain amount of patina to it that I'd like to keep. So the only way we're gonna get that door open, never mind. So I got 3 out of 4 of these bolts broke loose, the nuts removed from it so we can pull the seat. But this 4th one back here is so rusted up you can't get a wrench on it. And there's not a lot of room back there. But the rails on the seat are so rusted up, there's absolutely no way to get that seat moved forward. I went back to the video of the S10 cab bottom, found the location where that seat bolts in, so that we can go up underneath this thing with a cutoff wheel and cut that bolt location out. Problem averted. But wait, there's more. At absolutely no additional charge, we will also be including all of these extra problems. Tell them what they are, Johnny. Well, for starters, it turns out that the seat bolt location is about right there, which directly sits over the frame. So we're gonna have to take this cab loose from the frame, pick it up, which means we got to remove the cab mounts, and who knows, maybe we'll go ahead and cut the cab bottom while we've got it in the air. We'll see. We can use this inner fender wheel as part of the project, but it's in excellent shape, so we're going to save it instead. Yes. Now we've got a mark that we can measure from the pinch weld over to that mark, and maybe we can get that a straight cut. Hey, you gotta. What are you doing? You're in my way. Get your tail out of my face. Look out. Alright, so I got a bucket for all of my exterior nuts and bolts and what have you. And then I got a separate one for my interior screws and bolts and all that type of stuff. And the reason we're gonna go through that much trouble is because sometimes when you need a matching screw for the dash of your truck, it's gonna be absolutely impossible to find one at the local auto parts place, or at least it has been for me in the past. So we're gonna hang on to all of that stuff. Not to mention, all the stuff that goes in these buckets is a potential flat tire maker if it ends up in my yard. So here's a clip for the glove box. Most people wouldn't even think twice about that, but if you ever need to replace one, having one handy is way better than having to order one. Alright, so here's the deal. I started out removing the stuff on this side of the truck that's going with the project. Like the rail and the door jamb, the kick panel, stuff like that. And then I thought, well, we need to save everything on the dash that's worth saving. But the more I pulled stuff off the dash, the more I realized the dash isn't in that horrible of a condition. The dash pad is absolutely wasted. But considering this truck's been in a junkyard for 10 years or better with no glass all the way around it, and God only knows how long that door's been missing, so it's not in bad shape. So the concept now is pull the whole dash, throw it in the barn, save it for future use or potential use by someone else. So some of the bolts were already missing off this dash, which tells me that somebody had previously tried to remove this dash, which would probably explain that, which goes all the way around. So that explains that. So there's not much point in trying to save this dash, but I will promise you this. All these little screws that screw into plastic, those will come in handy later in life, as will the speaker connectors, which I assume somebody had previously cut in order to install a aftermarket speaker, or it might have been somebody that was after the connector, the GM connector. I don't know. But more importantly, the dash, it turns out everything that I wanted to save as far as brackets go are going to be saved with the truck, because our cut line's going to be somewhere around here. So all these brackets that I wanted to save are going to stay with the truck, so we don't have to worry about that. Alright, there are spots with reinforcement back here and right here that requires you to either cut the inside and the outside, or just use a Sawzall to go through it. And looking back at it now, I realize that it probably would have been easier just to make all the cut from the inside instead of doing that crap on the outside. Alright, boys and girls, put your safety glasses on, because this might get ugly. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to find out. I don't want to do this. This is a perfectly good windshield, and I talked to 3 different glass companies, said, can you remove this glass so I can use it somewhere else? And all 3 of them told me it would be cheaper to buy a new windshield. Provided we even got the glass out without breaking it, it's going to cost you more for us to remove that one piece of glass than it would be if we came to your house and replaced the whole glass with a brand new one. That don't make sense to me. Let's get up here just in case crap goes wrong. I know where it's hung. It's hung up in the back, which is totally different from being hung in the front, because you did not make that final cut on the back wall. Oh my gosh, can you cut that any more crooked? You know what? I hate a sawzall. Found it. Oh crap, that's heavy. We ain't gonna move this real fast, I promise you that. Might need to find a way to reduce the weight a little bit. So when I cut the roof, I made it a point to cut it 2 inches deeper than it needed to be. And the reason is I want to have the final cut line fit inside the grooves of the shipping container. I'm not worried about water getting into the grooves and dripping down, but I don't want a wasp nest jumping up in there that might come out and sting my wife when she's cutting the grass. So I'm gonna try to make the roof line fit the shape of the container. All right, we need to make a pattern. So now that we know that this is sort of okay, we pull it back to where we think it needs to be. Take a Sharpie. Now I know the way I'm about to cut this wears your blade out faster, but I also know that it cuts faster, and for some reason I get a more accurate cut out of it doing it this way. So don't give me any crap about a plunge cut or anything like that. we roll the window up. But all we got to do now is put some finishing touches on it. But that's going to have to wait because there's a storm coming in, which really confuses me because it's not 3:30 yet. Now, at the beginning of the video, I made reference to functional as well as artistic. And functional might have been the wrong phrase, but let's get all these finishing touches on it and we'll talk about what I meant. There we go. That's not finished yet, but before I show you the finished product, I gotta say this. If you're triggered because you think I just ruined a perfectly good truck, you keep in mind, shy of the lack of title, there's a fender, a door glass, bed panel, tailgate, tail lights, bumper. These are all items that are available to me later in life should I need them. Never mind the fact that I got the rest of the truck back there in the back of the property. So nothing's really going to waste here. If you're still upset and good and ticked off, feel free to leave me a nasty comment in the comment section and fuel that algorithm, because that algorithm needs more fuel than that truck has ever used in its entire lifespan. Johnny and his wife use a phrase that I absolutely love anytime they're describing their house. And that phrase is the title of this video. Monster Garage meets Martha Stewart. And personally, I think that pretty much sums up this project. It's just my opinion. Now, I know it looked like I did all the work in this project, but it truly was a group effort. Simply put, if Joe hadn't been willing to help me get that truck to the house, this project wouldn't have happened. And on top of that, a bunch of other people helped out with this project. Shane helped me out with both bumpers and getting them mounted. Tammy Lynn picked out all the flowers, which is pretty convenient because it's her pretend flower shop. Greg came up with a much better design than I had originally had, and I called my buddy Tom from Smith Signs and Printing and had him make it into a reality, and then he got it cut out super fast, quick, and in a hurry. And on top of that, Don hand delivered it to me. So that is super cool. Now, Johnny Garage Johnson not only provided the inspiration, but I called him up. I said, hey, I need a headlight bezel, preferably one that's broken. And he says, I got you covered. And it turns out that the headlight bezel that he got for me was one that he replaced off of his Cameo. So I got part of Johnny Johnson's Cameo on my project. How cool is that? Speaking of parts, I wasn't about to cut up a perfectly good hood, so I grabbed a piece of roofing metal and cut it out and made a pretend hood there. You can't really notice it until you walk up on the truck, so when you're pulling in the driveway, it doesn't really jump out at you. Got my quote-unquote tinted windows. And since the stupid truck's gonna get shaved tail lights before it's all over, we went ahead and robbed those tail lights off his stupid truck, put them on this project, so we got that covered. Now later in life, when I actually get the electrical ran to this building, we'll wire up all the lights on this truck, make them operate on a photocell so that they only come on at night. When you're pulling in the driveway, the flower planters look like a tonneau cover, and I think that's super cool. Later, I took some spray paint and made a pretend tire because it just looked weird with one tire only. And that sort of satisfied my OCD, so good enough. Anyway, I think it's pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the comments. Not that it really matters. I mean, the most important part here is the wife absolutely loves it. And that's all that matters to me. Peace, love, and mini trucks. What was I thinking? It's just one more vehicle I gotta keep washed. Idiot.